Today I'm going to start you on the incredible journey of programming a automated robot. We're going to learn how to use the Vex robotics stuff today. Robots and humans are very similar if you consider both use inputs and outputs to sense and react to the world. Um, Most humans use all five senses to kind of perceive what's going on around them. And based on the inputs of these senses, if you touch something hot, then you react, and it's going to give you some type of response. And we do it through muscles and through speaking and listening. Robots do it a little differently. They're doing it through whatever sensors that they might have. If you have a sonar sensor, which we have, which indicates distance, or a light sensor, which indicates ambient light, then that can be your sense of feedback. So in this activity, you're going to use RobotC software to monitor inputs and control the outputs. And this allows you to test the behavior of components before writing a program, and use it as a troubleshooting. So we're going to do sort of a testing of each of the components on your test bed. The first thing that you're going to need to do, now that you're hopefully in your team of two, is find RobotC. So here's the graphic for RobotC, and double click this to start it up. And it gives you this little intro window. Just click that once, and make sure that it's full screen. It does work a whole lot better that way. So let's go over to File, and we'll make a new file. The first thing that you're going to want to do is load the PLTW template file. So let's go to our Schoology page that we got this assignment, and the template is actually this text here. So I'm going to click and drag this and copy it. And then we'll go to RobotC, and I'm going to paste it all into here. So we'll paste that. Right click to paste. And this is your basic setup for all of your projects. It gives you this commented code. Everything in green is not actually being read by the computer. It's just for people to read comments. So we can put project title. We can call this just practice. Team members, it's me and myself, and date is today. So you'd put in whatever it is. Generally your team members is going to be a couple of you, and then just put the date that you started. Section we don't need to worry about. Occasionally we use that. Task description and pseudocode we'll describe a little bit later on. For this current project though, all you need to do is have your code in there. The next thing that you need to do is make sure that you connect your orange cord to the computer. So go get one of these if you don't have one of these, and pause this. Connect this to your computer, and so we got that connected. And then the other end, make sure it's connected to your Cortex. Battery should be plugged in. The power should be on this. So go ahead and connect all of those things up. And now we need to set up RobotC. So we go to Robot. The first thing you're always going to need to do is Vex Cortex communication mode, and this should be set to USB only if we are running the code without the controller. And we won't be using the controllers for this class. We do that in aerospace. So USB only for every project I can think of in this class. And the other one is platform type, and this one should be set to natural language Vex Cortex. Those two things are going to cause you the biggest problems. If those aren't that way, it just will not work. Usually your firmware is in good shape, but here is another thing to check. If it doesn't seem like it's downloading, you'll go to Manual Update Firmware, Master CPU Firmware first, standard file, and then once that's loaded, and again the Cortex needs to be plugged in for this to download, because it downloads it onto here. Once that is done, standard file, then go ahead and do the RobotC standard file as well. And if those have both been downloaded, everything should run as it's supposed to run. So now we need to set up all your motors and sensors for your entire test bed. So we're going to go to Robot, Motors and Sensors Setup. Now generally you will click on the Motors tab, and port 1 of your Cortex in the Motors tab is right here, and you can read the word motor on this, and you have ports 1 through 10. Port 1 and 10 look slightly different than the others. They are only 2-prong. So if you're plugging in actual motors using the motor controller wires, it's 2 through 9 are your options. Generally, the flashlight goes in number 1. So if you are doing your own code and you want to call the motor rear wheel, and you notice that I capitalized the first letter of the second word, that's just kind of standard notation is how it's done. Lowercase and then capital to distinguish them. Then I would select my motor type. Maybe I'm using the smaller motor, that's the 269. The larger, thicker motor is the 393. Those are the only ones that go continuous round and round and round and round. The servo will only go, it's a little bit more than 90 degrees and back. So those are the ones that you would use for these. Let's say I put a small motor in the back. I would select this one. You can leave all the rest of those as they are. Then I click apply, and you can see that it showed up here. Every time I wanted to access that motor, I would need to type in rear wheel. Well, for this test bed, there is a shortcut, which you're going to love. You don't have to type in every single motor and sensor. We're going to just click POE and SIM for Computer Integrated Manufacturing. That's the class you're in. And click that and click apply, and bow, there they all are up here. Now, if we go to motors, everything is populated for you. Sweet! Analog sensors, they're all populated for you, and the correct type has been selected. Line follower is a line follower. Potentiometer, light sensor, and digital sensors. A couple things to note on here with your encoder. The big red one, that has 2 ports. So even though we write quad on one of them, when you select quad encoder, it populates 2 ports for you. Same thing with the sonar. And we've selected this sonar. Currently, the sonar is in centimeters. So note that you can adjust the, if you want to measure in inches or centimeters or whatever you want to measure in, then you have to adjust your code. If you say 10 centimeters is different than 10 inches. So make sure you know what you're in. So I'm going to leave it all as the default for POE Sim Testbed, apply and click OK. And now I have everything established and everything set up. The next thing that we want to do is click on Robot, and we can compile and download. So as long as your Cortex is plugged in, okay, then you compile and download and leave the debug window open. So usually the first thing you have to do is save this. So I'm just going to save it, and you can create a folder for this if you want. This practice one's not a big deal. So I'm going to save it as new file template. I'll save over a previous practice that I had. So now it's time to compile and download. Now that we've saved it, so we'll click compile and download, and you're going to find the shortcut F5 is pretty sweet. So click on that. And oh, we got Vex Cortex power cycling. You're going to see this a billion times. So when you see this, you need to take your Cortex, turn it off, unplug it, plug it back in, turn it back on. And now the lights are probably going to be blinking different, so we click OK. And it's not going to work. It's going to give you that error, so we click OK and do it again. Compile and download. Ooh, it gave us another error, so we do the same thing. Turn it off, unplug it, plug it back in, turn it back on, and try it again. And blow, there you go. So now when you click start, you have your debugger windows down here. So the next thing you want to do is go to Robot Debugger and load up motors, and then Robot Debugger and load up sensors. So make sure both of those are selected. Now when you do your debugger in the next activity, you can go down here and toggle between motors and sensors, and you can manually turn the power on these things. So if I set this to 63, then your motor probably turned on if you did that. I'm going to set it back to 0. So we can just click on sensors and go back here. So at this point, I think you are ready to start. So load up the next activity and have at it. Make sure this audio is right. There we go.